And thank you, Randy. I was thinking this weekend while I was sitting in my office doing some work and reading some literature, catching up on a pile of books. I was thinking about some of the things that we've almost never heard about the history of racism. We hear a lot about racism today, but there's so much that we've never heard about, at least most people have never heard about. For example, how many of you know that prior to the 19th century, Christians were the most vocal opponents of slavery? You think of people like John Newton and that famous song that he wrote, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. He was once a slave owner, converted to Christianity, and became, as I just said, one of the most vocal opponents of slavery. Today you have secular progressives who are extolling the virtues of the Enlightenment, and they're denouncing Christianity as though it is a religion of racism and slavery. So they fail to give you a proper historical perspective. If you think about the Enlightenment clearly, cogently, you don't just think about social reform or scientific development or progress. What you think about is some of the main figures within the Enlightenment. They're lauded. No one wants to pull down their statues. They're lauded. They're esteemed. They're praised in academia. I'm thinking of people like Voltaire. Voltaire, who said, and it's hard to repeat what he said, but this is precisely what he did say. This again is Voltaire in the midst of the Enlightenment saying, the Negro race is a species of men as different from ours as the breed of spaniels is from that of greyhounds. They are of a different nature, greatly inferior. That was Voltaire, who famously said, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And he was absolutely right. His own absurdity has become an atrocity, a particularly acute atrocity in our generation. But he was not alone. David Hume, he's the oft-quoted Scottish empiricist philosopher. He was equally unenlightened in the midst of the quote, unquote, Enlightenment. And he said this, again, hard to repeat. Negroes, he said, never discovered any symptoms of ingenuity. While one of them might at first appear erudite, in the end he is only like a parrot who speaks a few words plainly. That's David Hume. And I suppose the worst of the bunch is Darwin himself. Darwin took all of this nonsense, this Enlightenment, quote-unquote, nonsense, and he gave it a scientific moniker to operate under. He gave it a basis. Of course, Darwin famously said at no very distant date, an endless number of lower races will have been eliminated by higher civilized races throughout the world. Where is the outrage in that? And then, of course, you have his bulldog, not just his bulldog, but his knighted bulldog, Sir Thomas Huxley, who said, no rational man cognizant of the facts believes the average Negro is the equal, still less the superior of the white man. It is simply incredible to think that he will be able to compete successfully with his bigger-brained, smaller-jawed rival in a contest that is to be carried on by thoughts and not by bites. So here you have a low-grade hypothesis that has influenced hundreds of millions of people, not the least of which was Hitler. And it has been referred to as the most powerful, comprehensive idea that has ever arisen on earth. That we can't understand the revolution that is taking place within America yesterday, today, tomorrow, right now, apart from the Darwinian revolution. And that's not an overstatement. I mean, you think of the Black Lives Matter movement, or the moniker, or the foundation. Well, Black Lives Matter as an organization was founded by people who are trained Marxists. I don't have to prove that because I played the clip on the air with one of the co-founders saying that very thing. We are trained Marxists. Well, think about Marxism for a moment. Black Lives Matter as a movement, as an organization, is being promoted now in professional sports, but it's Marxist. Well, what's behind Marxism? Well, Marxism is based on the atheistic worldview. There is no God. And in the 21st century, as in centuries past, Darwinism is the only game in town to explain how we could have a world that is not created. So there are many things that we have not heard about racism. And I think it's high time that we talked about these things and we put the Bible in a proper category, because there have been even presidents, including Barack Obama, who have bullied the Bible, have said all kinds of bad things about the Bible, including that the Bible teaches such things as racism. The truth of the matter is, with the Enlightenment lauded by Barack Obama, it suddenly became enlightened to drop references to African emperors and kings and queens and princes, and instead begin to refer to them as mere tribal leaders. Why? Because evolutionary racism demoted Africans to a subhuman species. Again, hard to say, but demoted them to apes devoid of souls. So they had to take away their rank and their grandeur. Ever think about this? The first non-Palestinian convert to Christianity was an Ethiopian eunuch. He was in charge of the treasury of the Ethiopian queen. And his conversion was the beginning of Christianity in Africa. So when you think about the Bible only deals with one race, the human race, and when someone from the African continent is referred to, the history is told correctly so that you recognize that this is not some small passing figure in history, but his conversion, the beginning of Christianity in Africa. And of course, if you know something about Christian history, you'll know that many famous early Christian leaders were Africans. Think Tertullian, or Cyprian, or Origen, or Cyril of Alexandria, or Augustine. Or think about the fact that Ethiopia is the oldest continually existing Christian civilization in the entire world. These are just some of the things you never hear about when racism is discussed in the public sphere in America today. When modern secular pundits talk about slavery, they predictably focus on the transatlantic slave trade that began in the 16th century and continued on until the 19th century. What is overlooked in the interest of political correctness is the Arab slave trade beginning in the 7th century with Muhammad, and that continues on in the present all around the world. The total number of Africans whose lives were destroyed in that slave trade is 100 million, perhaps much, much, much more.